Welcome to the Half-Blood Report.
Here we discuss Percy Jackson news, interviews, and all things Riordan. I'm Samuel, your co-host.
And I'm Diego, your other co-host.
And today on the podcast, we have a very special and awesome guest with us.
Yep, if you haven't been listening to the show and somehow don't know this already, Tehlor Kay Mejia is the author of the YA books We Set the Dark on Fire and We Unleash the Merciless Storm, and of course, the Rick Riordan Presents Paola Santiago series. Tehlor, welcome to the podcast.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on. We've read both your books, both your Paola Santiago books, and we've also
and both your other books.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
Anyways, thank you again for coming. How's the virtual tour been going so far?
It's been so cool. You know, I miss going out in person and like actually meeting the people who read the books. That was always my favorite part. But I think people are doing a good job of like having awesome virtual events. I've had some great conversation partners. I got to talk to Gracie Kim, who wrote The Last Fallen Star, for my first event, which was so cool. And then
Gracie's awesome.
Oh, Gracie is so awesome. And her book is so good too. I'm so excited for the second one. And then of course, next Tuesday, I get to have an event with Rick himself. So that should be awesome. But yeah, it's been a blast so far. I love celebrating these books, and all the fans of everything Rick Riordan are like the most enthusiastic, passionate people. So it's always very, very cool to get to talk to them.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so I guess, how did you come up with a premise for Paola Santiago? What was that like?
Yeah, well, I grew up being totally terrified by the legend of La Llorona. I sometimes still do a double take of Bodies of Water if it's nighttime. So I was definitely very scared of that for a very long time. And then I have a daughter who is like very into space and science. And when I came up with the idea for this book, she was like 4 or 5. And I'm kind of more like Pal's mom in the books. I do like tarot cards and altars and candles and stuff. So I was like, man, how is this going to play out? Like, how are we going to put these two totally different sides of ourselves together? So it kind of started out as like fan fiction for my own kid. and then of course I was like, all right, what was the stuff from like Mexican mythology that really like stuck with me from when I was a kid? And it was like all the scary stuff for sure. So I was like, all right, let's go. La Llorona retelling. And people thought I was crazy. Like, you guys know about La Llorona. It's like a horrifying story, like really, really traumatizing.
Yeah, drowning kids isn't exactly the best story.
Yeah, no, it's awful. So yeah, a lot of people were like, really? You're going to write this for like middle school kids? And I was like, they can handle it. But yeah, I guess that's how it came to be.
That's great.
I'll admit, I was a little bit scared reading Paula the first time. I was like, okay, it's middle grade. It's middle grade, right? It's middle grade, right?
Middle grade, right? Yeah, it's definitely middle grade, but also definitely scary.
And what does your kid think of Paola Santiago now?
She actually really likes them, which is so cool. She's about to turn 9 now, so she's like right in the age range, and I always read them out loud to her when I get the advanced copies. And so the other day, after we had read the second book, I walked in her room and she was just reading the first book on her own. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. It's like catching your kid reading under the covers at night, but like it's your kid and it's your book.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I'm sure she'll like get way too cool for me sometime soon, but right now she's enjoying them.
She'll be like, oh, my mom's books, ew.
So not cool. Yeah.
Or maybe she'll just start reading your YA books.
Right, yeah. I'll just keep writing like books for every age group until she's an adult. Yeah, no, hopefully she still thinks it's cool. She's like my manager. Anytime we go into a bookstore, she's like, excuse me, do you have Paola Santiago? Because my mom, she wrote it and she'll sign them if you want her to. It's very on top of it.
She's making sure they have your books supplied on the shelves.
Yeah, exactly. Just intimidating people from her like great height of 4 feet tall.
we've
awesome.
we've touched upon we set the dark on fire a couple times. Funny story. Diego and I both actually read the book and then gave it to our younger sisters, which they're in middle school, so it should be fine.
Yeah. Man, that makes me happy.
But we did want to ask you, what's the difference between writing YA and middle grade to you?
I think, well, middle grade is more fun. That's what I always say. I love writing YA for sure, but it's a little bit angstier. And I feel like people who read the Paola Santiago books are like more angsty than this. No, it's a little bit more like YA is teenagers getting ready to go be adults. And in middle school, you're still like, you're still close enough to being a kid that you are able to like have fun and not take yourself incredibly seriously and, like get into some like wacky hijinks and stuff without like looking down your nose at absolutely everything. So I think it's like it's my favorite age group to write about and for, just because I feel like, I don't know, 12-year-olds are the coolest people. Like they're just like having a great time. And even when they're not having a great time, they're still like, they're still so, I don't know, they're still so willing to just like go on an adventure. I feel like the most of any age group. So
I think our listeners will be happy with that one.
12-year-olds are the best. You heard it here.
But yeah, they're being very like different genres and different books. What similarities would you say that they share?
I mean, probably a lot of similarities overall. In my books, I think the big similarity that's through all of them is the idea that you don't have to be a particular kind of special or chosen person in order to be a hero. So no matter what the age group is, I write about a lot of kids or teenagers who are like starting out from kind of a powerless place where either they don't believe in the cause they're being asked to fight for, like in Paula, or where they're kind of like separated from the people that they want to be fighting with, like in We Set the Dark on Fire. And I think both of my main characters in those books have this chance to come from a place of feeling powerless and feeling like they're not the right person to fight this fight. And then just through this desire to do the right thing and protect their communities, they become the hero of the stories just because of that. So I think any book I write, you'll see an element of that in it for sure.
Oh wow, it's all coming together in my head.
Yeah, it's like, wait a second, wow, you really are into that theme.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on it also a bit earlier, but growing up, like what was it like hearing these stories, and you were mentioning that it was only the scary ones that stuck with you. Were you ever doing as Paola was doing, like looking around the cactuses trying to find duendecitos?
Yes, absolutely. That one's definitely more me. I was really on the lookout for magical stuff all the time. I was maybe the opposite of Pau. Pau was sort of like telling herself that this magical stuff doesn't exist because she's afraid of it. And she's like using science and facts to be like, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real. I was the complete opposite. All I wanted was to believe that the world I lived in was more magical than I thought. So yeah, I was definitely on the lookout. Or I'm the oldest of all my siblings and cousins. So sometimes I was like creating things too. Like my little cousin and I used to, this was like, okay, I'm dating myself, but like this was like a big time of like aliens. Everyone thought aliens were gonna be a thing. And so I would go outside like really early in the morning and like arrange all this stuff in the yard to like aliens had been there. And then I would really commit. I'd be like, no, I didn't do this. I don't know how this happened. So we would like go hunting for like supernatural paranormal. If I couldn't find any, I would make them myself.
Mess with your cousins and siblings.
That's great.
That is so funny.
I might use that one.
Yeah. We gotta try that one out, Samuel.
Yeah, you should. It's really fun. I think like my little brothers, I have 3 little brothers, and all of them probably have a story of a time when I like really convinced them that something was happening that absolutely was not happening.
Yeah. Speaking of all these Mexican folk tales and monsters, are there any that didn't make the first 2 books, and what can you tell us about them?
I'm like, well, my favorite ones are going to be in the third one, so I can't spoil it too much. But I think the biggest one that I was very afraid of that is not in the first two books that you may or may not see as part of the third book is El Kukui was the most terrifying boogeyman type I ever heard. He lived under the bed. He was gonna put, and everyone who grew up with Mexican parents that I've talked to has like a different version of this story. Like mine was like, if you don't finish all the food on your plate, or like if you sleep for some reason, if you sleep with your feet hanging off the bed, he's gonna get you. I'm like, why is that bad? I don't know. Yeah, so definitely
grab
I
your
know,
foot.
like drag you under the bed. Why? Like, what does he want with me? So yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I'm still scared of like underneath beds today. Like I always check like whenever I get to like if I'm in a hotel or something, I always have to like look underneath the bed, just wave my hand, make sure there's nothing there.
Yes, I still do that. The whole underneath of my bed is like storage containers now, just because I can't, like I don't like to have any it's under a bed ever. But hotels, it's the first thing I do is look under there every time. Closets and under beds for sure.
Oh yeah, man. And like there's like these little beds that have like flaps on them, like of like cloth and stuff. And I can always just imagine like a hand coming out, grab my ankle.
Now I'm gonna have nightmares. This is your payback. Right? I scared you with the first book, and now you're trying to terrify me.
Payback.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but speaking of book 3 and things you can't tell us, what can you tell us about book 3?
Oh man, not very much, but I will do my best. So I feel like book 1 was really Pao just like figuring out that this other world that she didn't believe in existed in the first place and just dealing with that. Like you didn't believe folktales were real. You thought your mom was superstitious and suddenly here are all these monsters you didn't believe in, like prowling around your town, kidnapping your friends. So that was like enough to deal with. 2, she's kind of trying to figure out how she's personally connected to this world. So like now she knows it exists, she knows she has some connection to it, but what is that connection? And so it's a lot about her like exploring things that she didn't know about herself and her family and like why she's part of all this to begin with. And then in book 3, she's going to take all the things she's learned in the first 2 and use her position in this world and the world itself to kind of like defend the world she grew up in from it. So that's going to be interesting. There's definitely some new monsters. Probably one of the most terrifying villains I've ever written, including La Llorona. It's worse. So if you were scared.
Oh no.
It's definitely it's like the pinnacle of everything you most fear is going to come out in this one.
Well, at least now I have a year to prepare myself.
Yeah, exactly. Like clean out under your bed and put some storage containers under there because you're not going to want empty space. Yeah, so it should be interesting. There's definitely some new characters that were not in either of the first 2 books, and they're definitely return of some characters that you already know. And I think that's pretty much all I can say for now, but it should be quite a ride.
Well, thank you.
That sounds very exciting.
Thank you for telling us, that much. That's really helpful. And because we haven't asked enough, what can you tell us about the thing we're super excited for, Paola Santiago on TV?
Oh man, yes. I'm so excited too. I always feel like just terrible because every time people are like, tell us more, I'm like, literally can't. This is all I have. So yeah, we're working with Eva Longoria's production company, and it's gonna be TV, and it's so far in the very, very early stages, but like very exciting anyway. I've talked to their people. We have a head writer and showrunner who we will announce eventually, but this person is completely awesome. I got to have a really cool like hour-long Zoom call with them, just like going over all the stuff about the book, and they actually have been to the forest in Oregon that I base Forest of Nightmares on and had like a very similar upbringing to Pao and like similar fears about all
no way.
Yeah, like really part of the community and I'm so excited. So everyone we add to the team, one by one, it's like we're just building a powerhouse. So forever, but I think it's gonna be worth it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can say for now. When we talked about it, this is the first time I've ever said this out loud, so it's exclusive.
Oh, yes.
Score.
Very epic in scope. They said they wanted to make it feel like a movie split into 8 parts instead of just a TV serial. So you guys are you heard it here first.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
I was already excited, and if it's even possible to believe, I am more excited now.
I do believe it because I am more excited.
Speaking of Oregon, that's where you live, right?
Yep.
Not to dox you. So I was wondering,
it's a big state. They'll never find me.
I was wondering why you decided to make like the more terrifying place like in the world, like so close to where you live.
It's pretty much based on this forest. So my grandparents moved here way before I was born. My dad was a kid, and they have this huge like multi-family plot of land. So like they live on it, their parents live on it, but it's like 40 acres in the middle of just like the spookiest woods. And when I was a kid, which like now I have a kid, so I realized this was like bizarre that they let me do this. I remember me and my brothers and cousins having like the full run of this 40 acres of just undeveloped forest. So like we were doing crazy stuff. Like literally we would go out with like jars and flip over big logs we found and catch scorpions in them. Like it was just like we were completely feral children. So like I think a lot of it was like, okay, where's a place that's like, because it was, you know, the desert was all the stories we heard growing up were set in the desert. But we grew up in the woods. So to me, like the more viscerally scary thing is the forest. So I was like, if we're going to level up the fear factor, we got to go to a place that I'm afraid of. Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely where. But I got to go kind of like stomp around in the woods back where I used to play when I was a kid, when I was writing this book, and it was just like so fun to see. But there was, I mean, these woods were legitimately magical. Like there was a day when I came across like this madrone forest that was all burnt, but we'd never seen or heard of a fire. But all the trees were like black and twisted, and we were walking for like an hour. It was so terrifying. We called it the witch's forest, and we did like this whole weird little ritual there.
Oh my god!
To find it again the next day, and we never found it again. Like it was just there one day. Yeah, we looked for it for months afterwards, and we never found it again.
And you needed to create proof of aliens.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Get the aliens in your backyard.
The aliens were burning the trees and then unburning them, apparently, because we never found it. Yeah, so definitely had a lot of real life inspiration to draw from for creepy forests.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, all I ask is that you don't set the third one in New York.
Don't worry, it's not. I love New York, but definitely not my brand of scary.
So peeking around the buildings and stuff. But yeah, speaking of like where you grew up and the stories from your childhood and stuff, how is it that you went about like becoming a writer?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
How did that happen? Good question. I've always written. When I was in first grade, my teacher had this like take a book kit home where you could make your own book. So she had like, it was like, you know, now that I think back on it, it's like printer paper folded over and stapled together and like some markers, but like it seemed so magical to me. And you could check one out and take it home over the weekend and then like bring a book back. So I did this like every weekend. I was so obsessed with it. And I think I've been obsessed with the idea of making a book myself ever since then. And I just kind of kept writing. I won a poetry contest the next year in second grade. And then in high school, I wrote a lot more poetry, creative writing stuff. That's when I started writing longer stuff. And I would write like fan fiction of myself and my friends and like things that I wished we had done that we were not brave enough to do. And then when my daughter was born, I started looking around being like, what books is she gonna love? We need to buy her like 1 billion books. And I was super bummed that there just like weren't a ton of books that I felt like would reflect her experience. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, man, I guess that's really true for me too. Like I read everything and I loved stories, but I always felt like escaping into somebody else's life. I never felt like, hey, this could be me. Like this could be my family. I could be the hero of this. It was always like, wow, cool for someone else to have this story. And so that's when I started getting really obsessed with the idea of writing stories that felt fun and adventurous, but also felt like home to me. So yeah, that's how I got started. And then getting started writing with Rick, I sent the pitch for Paola Santiago and the River of Tears in, and it turns out that Rick had grown up in South Texas, which I didn't know. So he also had like, he knew the legend of La Llorona already and was like already scared of it before he ever read my book. So it was a cool moment of like, oh, all right, there is room for stories like these. Even this really famous guy has heard of this.
That's great. And I have to ask, if it's not the fact that he knew about La Llorona, what surprised you most about working with Rick?
Oh man, he's funny. I think everybody knew that though. He's so like, I expected him to be this really like, Uncle Rick. Like he was just gonna be this like friendly, funny guy, but he's so brilliant. Like, and not that it sounds insulting, not that I was surprised he was smart, but like he's such a brilliant author, first of all, but he's also a really brilliant editor. Like when he first read my book and gave me notes back, I was like, oh, that's why you're like the most famous guy in middle grade, because he really gets it. I mean, he is just like so professional and so smart and so good at what he does. So it's like, getting into middle grade with like one of the heroes of the genre is like a dream for sure. He's an amazing guy.
Oh yeah, I think that's the takeaway here. What surprised you? He's smart. What? That's crazy.
I couldn't believe it. No, I'm just kidding. I obviously knew he was smart, but like really smart.
You take that out of context, make Rick Riordan listen to it, have an awkward conversation.
Be like a little sound bite that like goes around the whole internet. Like Tehlor Kay Mejia is surprised that Rick is smart. No, I was not. I promise.
Correct that one. That's so cool. I think it's something that like a lot of other authors we've spoken to have kind of echoed, like, starting off writing, like realizing that there's not a lot that is kind of like you, that all the protagonists fit into just one category and there's not much diversity. And I think it's really interesting that you kind of just took it into your own hands to make it happen. You didn't just sit there and were like, well, I guess somebody else, and you just did it.
Yeah. And it's
very cool.
To be because I started doing it with my young adult books, but it's so much more fun to do it with Rick Riordan Presents, because we're all kind of coming from that same place of like not having seen ourselves in our books and like wanting to make that change, but from all these different cultural mythologies and backgrounds and different lives. And it's so cool to have that community while you're working on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. And now your daughter does like Paola Santiago. So.
Exactly. The dream.
It's gone full circle.
Exactly. Jinx.
What similarities would you say, because I know you share a lot of similarities with Paola's mom, but what would you say you share more with Paola?
Yeah, I think we're both very stubborn. Like very, very
That's
stubborn.
A good thing.
Yeah, totally.
I'm stubborn too.
Good. We both, I think the biggest thing about me that I put into Pau's character is just like, she really wants to do the right thing. She doesn't always have the perfect way of going about it or the perfect tools for the job. She's not always like the exact right person to jump in and fix everything, but she really, really wants to jump in and fix everything. And I definitely think I took that from my own life. I was like, oh man, we're going to put this character into all these crazy situations. And then I got there and I was like, no, she can do it. She'll just get in there. No, we don't need the police. We don't need adults. We don't need anybody. We'll just get it. No, we'll just send the children into the spooky cactus field and they'll just figure it out. So definitely
send in the children.
Yeah, exactly. The children. But they do a great job,
That's another one you don't want to get taken out of context.
Yeah, we don't need kids. We don't need parents. Just send the children in to do the job. The more dangerous, the better.
And I think Samuel mentioned like similarities that you have with her mother. Could you tell us, reiterate those?
Yeah, totally. She's just like such a funny hippie. I love I feel like I just kind of wrote a lot of what I believe about like spiritually with like tarot and candles and like a lot of the mythology and stuff that I believe in. I just kind of had a place to put that, which was nice. And then also Pao kind of like pushing back against it a lot, and her mom kind of having to be like, hey, if the issue is prejudice against our cultural beliefs, that's not my fault. That's their fault. So it was a nice place to put all of that. But yeah, definitely a lot of her kind of more spacey hippie stuff came from me. Although I am a better mom, I would say. So spacey. She's like, oh no, my daughter went off to like do a really dangerous thing far away. Oh well. Like, here, meet my new boyfriend at the pizza place.
Oh yeah, that
I mean,
was
like, pay a little more attention to my kid than Pao's mom.
yeah. I thought that was pretty funny because it's like, yeah, my daughter's been lost in the wilderness, wandering around. It's like, oh man, you know what I should do? I should get a boyfriend.
New guy seems like a really good time for personal upheaval at home right now.
Yeah. Well, speaking of all these things, I think for some of our other listeners, we should get into a couple of plot-based questions, and I think the first one that really
Spoiler
struck me-
alert, we
yeah,
should
yeah,
say.
spoiler alert. Let's
Okay.
probably put that one in.
Spoiler.
One thing that kind of interested me since the first one, or ever since I read the blurb and heard about Dante's grandma's chancla, I was like, how is she gonna do that? Like I was back when it must have been like the first time we ever heard Paola, or like that I heard about you as an author, and it was kind of just it said the little blurb said like she goes on an adventure and the thing and the chancla, and I was like, what? Like how is this gonna play in? But in the books we see the arma del alma weapons appear multiple times. And in this one specifically, Paola gains one of her own, and we kind of see like the flower and her reaching it. But can you tell us more about what exactly these weapons are and how it is that they're formed?
Yeah, this is something we're gonna get a little more into in book 3, so I can't go too crazy with it. But
Ooh.
I love the idea of the weapons as sort of like their tools for protecting the world. And I think it's so interesting to think about how we're connected to all the tools we use to do the things we're supposed to do. And so I love the idea of these weapons that are like connected to the soul of their wielder and they only respond to them. And it's like, I've always been really, really interested in magical weapons in general. I think like who wasn't super thrilled with like the Percy Jackson pen turning into the sword. I've like always been so into that. So what I was like thinking about when I did it was like, okay, but like what are some objects that would feel like culturally like home to Mexican American readers who read this? And of course it had to be the chancla for sure. I know, and this is the question I get the most often, like, the chancla! It would have been scary enough on its own, even if you didn't turn it into, like, a terrifying ghost-smashing club. But yeah, of course, I said this in another interview recently. I was like, if you've ever read any of my books, you know that the only person to wield one of these amazing weapons is not just going to be the boy next door. She's going to have her own. And so, yeah, the weapon appears to Pao. I'm trying to do this with like as minimal spoilers as possible because
Please
what she does.
indulge in the spoiler.
I know, right? So like after she fights the fight against the big bad man ghost, she finds she has empathy for him, and that's what triggers the Armadillo Alma, because these aren't just weapons that can be used by anybody. They are weapons that are supposed to be for the purpose of protecting the world of the living against this sort of spooky void world of the dead. And I don't think that Pao would have been able to find hers if she hadn't shown empathy for the ghost that she was fighting. And I think that's like a big theme of the book for sure, is that
Definitely.
in the first book, she really has to be like us versus them. Like, I'm just discovering that this world exists and that I'm in it. But then in the second book, she's like, who are these phantasmas? Like, where do they come from? Where do the monsters come from? And like, how am I connected to them? And so a lot of it is her coming to terms with the fact that the world is like a little bit less black and white than she thought. And that by having empathy for her kind of enemies in this way, she's going to get good things in return. And definitely her Armadillo is the biggest one. So yeah, I think it's such a cool weapon. I wish I had a real one all the time. Like someday someone will make me one out of paper mache and send it to my house and it'll be the best day.
You heard that, listeners. Paper mache, Taylor's house, 6-foot staff.
Please, thank you.
You can feel free to not include the blade.
Yeah, right. Probably not the blade. They might buy that when they're shipping.
Yeah, I think yeah, the whole act of goodwill, and one of the things that is, as you said, a big theme in this book is kind of understanding where people come from and not just judging them by what they are now, but kind of understanding why is it that this evil ghost person is an evil ghost person. Were they always an evil ghost person? Like, what's all that about? And I think that's a much I think Samuel and I must have talked about it on the podcast when we were like making predictions and stuff, but kind of like the direction in which the book was going to go is kind of understanding that the evil, like I always wanted not to just have like a big fight with evil person at the end, but to kind of like have something where Paula can understand who this person is, and kind of come to terms with that in a much less like just stab punch sort of way.
Yeah.
And I was really, pleased to have that happen.
Oh, I'm so glad. That's good. I worried about it a little bit because I was like, people just want like the big bad villain, but like even with La Llorona, it's like at the end we really are learning like why she became this and like why she deserves humanity.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. But I think you kind of led us into the next plot-based question that we have. With the mention of the void. The Force of Nightmares deals a lot more with the void than the first book, and kind of starts to explore sort of what it is. Can you tell us a little bit more about what exactly the void is?
Again, you guys keep picking on my...
Aw, dang it.
You will learn everything about what the void is in book 3. That's pretty much all I can say. No, I guess like part of it is, and I think anyone who's familiar with Mexican folklore, or pretty much anyone who has watched Coco, probably knows a little bit about what the void is. It's definitely like a separation between the world of the living and the world of the dead, but it's this big fathomless thing where time obviously works differently, and I'm like, what can I say without totally giving it away? There are rules to it, and it is a thing, but you can't know what it is until next summer, and I'm so sorry about that.
Yeah, I could tell you what it is, or I could not tell you what it is.
I could tell you what it is, but then why would you read the third book? Lots more void. You think there's more void in this book? Man, there's a lot of void in the third book. Don't worry, all your questions will be answered.
Paola, it actually increases exponentially. Paola Santiago 3 is just 100% void.
No real world at all. No, I'm just kidding.
Just all the void. Yeah, you heard that, folks. Buy the third book. Go, do it.
Yeah. It doesn't have a cover yet, and you can't buy it anywhere. But when it's time, please.
Yeah. Buy 1 copy, 2 copies. Buy a copy for your grandma and your mom.
Perfect. Thank you, man. You should do all my promo.
Yeah, and I think Samuel, do you have any questions as we start to wrap up the interview?
Well, yeah, we have some questions left, but I'm just loving the plugs, Diego. Do you think we could also plug the book that just came out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Paola
maybe.
Santiago and the Forest of Nightmares. Available wherever you read books.
Yeah, and some places you wouldn't think to read books, like Walmart or Target. I'm always
Yeah.
wherever books are sold, and some places where you just buy paper towels usually.
Visita la biblioteca más cercana para recibir tu copia de Paola Santiago and the Forest of Nightmares.
Perfect.
I used to do that a lot. Just do ads in Spanish. It
That
sounds
was-
better. I don't know how to tell you. Ads in Spanish, they just
100% sounds better. Like, I'm just gonna have you like send me a recording of that, and I'm gonna play it over every Instagram story I do with the book cover.
It's so funny. Samuel, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's fine. I that was really funny. I guess kind of one of our final questions was like one thing that I love about this series is there are just some really good like words of wisdom all the time. If it's how to deal with police or ghosts or just life in general. I love it all, and I think we've touched on it a bit. But I was wondering if you had to pick kind of a specific thing to condense it down for readers to take away, what would it be, and how do you hope it would impact them?
Yeah, younger readers that might be reading this and might finally see a character who's kind of similar to themselves. What do you hope that they'll take away?
Yeah, I think it's just like a more condensed version of what we were talking about before, which is just that being a hero doesn't mean shiny armor or a fancy weapon or a powerful family or anything like that. It just means caring about your community and choosing to do the right thing. And in a lot of ways, maybe that's less glamorous than you think, but in the real world, yeah, being a hero is available to absolutely anyone to do what's right, and that means you, man. That means all of you.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's
Yeah.
a fantastic thing. That's we got to put that one in an audio clip and spread it around the world.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. I would prefer that one than Tehlor Kay Mejia is surprised that Rick is smart.
All right. Any final questions, Samuel?
N- I'm trying to think of like some question to ask about Emma like off the top of my head, but all I can say is I love her, and I love what you're doing with her.
Emma is very funny.
Emma is so funny. She just like she really wants to do the right thing. And I think that's why her and Pao are best friends, because from both their different sides with their very different personalities, they're really both just trying so hard to take care of the people they love, even when they mess up. I loved getting to write more Emma in this book, actually. She was so like a prisoner of the spooky void for the whole first book. So it was
Yeah.
cool.
Emma kind of didn't really have an appearance in book one, being
Well,
captured and all.
I think what Diego and I said in our review last time was that we both we really liked like the intro couple chapters with Emma, and then we were really hoping to see more of her in book two, and we got a little bit, and it was also cool because she got to be more of herself.
The guy in the chair.
Guy in the chair. Yes, I love her. Lots more Emma in book 3. So
Oh, okay, nice.
Oh man.
like a lot more. She actually gets to go on an adventure for once in book 3. I don't think that's like too much of a spoiler, but she gets out of the chair.
Well, thank you for all the book 3 spoilers, and thank you for what you told us about the two, and just for coming on in general. We love your books, and we love talking to you. So it's
Yeah,
just been a
thanks
real
so
pleasure.
much for being on, and we'll make sure to try to snag you for book 3 to talk about all these things now that we'll have more knowledge of the void and other stuff, and definitely more Emma.
Definitely more Emma. Thank you guys so much for having me, and thank you for being patient for an entire year while we figured it out. I really had such a blast. This is such a cool podcast. I appreciate everything you guys are doing about all these books. My My name's Tehlor Kay Mejia, author of the Paola Santiago series from Rick Riordan Presents, and I would rather go to La Llorona's magical void than listen to the Half-Blood Report.
Oh my God.